Welcome back to Exploring the Opportunity Atlas. In Module 1, you learned about the data behind the Atlas and the foundational concepts you'll need to use it effectively. In Module 2, you'll learn how to use the Atlas to identify key factors of upward income mobility in cities and neighborhoods.
All right, I'm ready.
Go to opportunityatlas.org. Click Begin Exploring. This is what the Opportunity Atlas looks like. Answer 3 questions to get started. First, where? Where do you want to view outcomes? Use the search bar in the upper left of the screen to search for an address, city, county, or census tract, and the Atlas will zoom into your region of interest. Practice by typing in the name of your city.
Yep, that's my city.
Next, what? What outcomes are you interested in learning about? A series of metrics for the selected region will display in the left panel of the screen. To start, you'll see options to display household income and incarceration rates. Select Show More to reveal a longer list of outcomes. Now, if you remember from Module 1, the data used in the Atlas comes from the U.S. Census Bureau and covers 96% of children born between 1978 and 1983. So, whenever you're looking at outcome data in the Atlas, you're not looking at a snapshot of children living in this neighborhood today, but rather you're looking at the average outcomes of children who grew up in this neighborhood in the 1980s and are now adults. So, these children may not live in the same neighborhood today, but that's okay, because we're interested in understanding how the neighborhoods they grew up in have impacted their upward income mobility as adults.
So we're looking back in time, kind of like we're using a time machine.
Sort of. Okay, back to the Atlas. Hovering over the icons next to each variable provides more details. The map and legend will update based on the metric you select. In addition to estimated outcomes, we also provide neighborhood characteristics so that you can explore the association between children's outcomes and neighborhood-level dynamics like median rents or job growth. All right, the third question you need to answer is who. For whom are you interested in seeing outcomes? Use the buttons in the right panel to look at outcomes for different demographic groups. You can choose any combination of parental income, race, and gender. The map and legend will recolor to show outcomes for the subgroup you select.
Wow, this is cool.
There's a lot more you can do. But before we dive into other data, let's talk about parent income. The Atlas allows you to group children by different parental income levels. Low is defined as parents in the 25th percentile nationally, which equates to household incomes of about $27,000 per year. Middle is for parents with household income at the 50th percentile nationally, or almost $56,000 per year. And high is defined as parents at the 75th percentile of household income, earning about $95,000 per year. As a reminder, we measure incomes using information from tax return data. For parents, we use their average income between 1994 and 2000 as reported to the IRS. For their children, we measure average income from 2014 and 2015. That is when the children in our data set were in their mid-30s, which is typically when adults' income ranks stabilize. These incomes are in 2015 dollars. To make the comparisons clear, everything in the Opportunity Atlas has been adjusted for inflation.
That is super helpful.
All right, back to the Atlas. In addition to parents' income, we can see how race and gender may have impacted the long-term outcomes for the children in our study. This box always tells us which group of people we're observing. Parent income is automatically set to show the outcomes of children who grew up in low-income families. We can see that because parent income is set to low. Additionally, child race and child gender are automatically set to all, but can be adjusted in various ways. Okay, pop quiz. Based upon what you know of the data in the Atlas and the characteristics that are currently selected, which group of children are we looking at right now?
Okay, well, we're looking at adult outcomes of children who grew up in the 1980s and 90s. And based upon what we've selected here, their parents' income was low, and they could be any race and any gender.
Perfect. Now, let's observe their outcomes as adults. On the left side of the screen, in the Outcomes section, we can see these children's long-term outcomes, including how much money they make in adulthood, their incarceration rates, and more, which we will cover later in the course. Below the Outcomes section is the Neighborhood Characteristics section. Neighborhood characteristics include present-day metrics about the selected census tract or neighborhood. These include poverty rates, teen birth rates, and the rate of single-parent households.
There are so many things we can look at here. Okay, explain to me the difference between outcomes and neighborhood characteristics.
It's important to realize that neighborhood characteristics are different than outcomes. When we look at outcomes, we ask, what is an individual's station in life as an adult based on their parents' income when they were a child? But when we look at neighborhood characteristics, we say, let's compare present-day characteristics of one neighborhood to the same characteristics in another neighborhood. We are learning about the environment instead of the individual people living in it.
Ah, that makes sense. That's a helpful distinction when we're designing policies, whether we're targeting current community conditions or focusing on longer-term systems change where it's important to understand the historical context.
Exactly. Okay, let's try another example. Type in Census Tract 517-600-50100, which is the Near West End neighborhood in Richmond, Virginia. Now, because parental income is set to low, we know that these children grew up in low-income families, which, if you recall, means their parents earned about $27,000 per year. But how did these children do as adults? We find out by looking at the adulthood outcomes metric on the left, which indicates that these children went on to earn household incomes of $45,000 in adulthood, which is significantly above their parents' household income. This is an example of upward income mobility, the American dream in action.
What do all the colors on the map mean?
The scale will always update to correspond with the outcome or neighborhood characteristics selected on the left. The colors on the scale correspond to the colors on the map. Red means lower income, and blue means higher income. So, children who grew up in low-income families in the Near West End, who make $45,000 per year as adults, are at the high end of the scale, and that's why their neighborhood is colored blue. On the left side of the page, look at the scale labeled Household Income. This is the same scale shown in the bottom right corner. Now, click somewhere on the map. When you click on the map, a black dot appears on the scale and a bolded number appears above the scale. The bolded number above the scale shows the average income of the adults in the area you clicked on who have the characteristics chosen in the menu in the top right of your screen. So here, the number shows the average adulthood household income of children who grew up in low-income families in the selected census tract. Let's try another example. Type in Detroit, Michigan. When we look at children who grew up in low-income families with any race and gender, what do you see?
I see a whole lot of red, which means that most low-income children who grew up in Detroit have lower adulthood incomes when compared to children who grew up in low-income families all across the country.
What does everyone, selected group, and on-screen mean?
Selected group means that the scale shows the range of outcomes for adults with the characteristics you've selected from across the United States. Everyone shows the range of outcomes for all children in America, regardless of what's selected in the box above. There's still a lot of red because the household income of children who grew up in Detroit is significantly below the national average. Now click on screen to show the range of outcomes only for the area visible on your screen. Now what do you see?
Instead of a sea of red, now I see a lot of different colors. The high end and low end of the scale is a lot narrower too than when compared to everyone in the country.
Exactly. Though the colors on the map change, the underlying data always remains the same. The on-screen coloring simply helps to show local variation more clearly. While most children who grew up in Detroit have below average adult income when compared to the national average, some neighborhoods have higher income than others. For example, let's look at low-income families in the Aviation subdivision in South Detroit, and then children from low-income families in a neighborhood just to the north, Barton McFarland. Children from Aviation subdivision ended up earning an average of $27,000 per year as adults, while children from Barton McFarland earned an average of $16,000 per year in adulthood. We can draw a very important conclusion from this. Growing up in a low-income family in Detroit does not by itself prevent children from making more money as an adult.
But what's the answer? What explains the income difference of adults that grow up in low-income families?
That's what we're trying to find out. In the paper, The Opportunity Atlas, Mapping the Childhood Roots of Social Mobility, which we'll discuss more in Module 3, we build on the evidence that the specific neighborhood in which children grew up explains much of the difference in their incomes as adults. This means that even though children grow up near each other, the differences in their neighborhoods were important enough to significantly impact their income as adults. Also in this paper, we identify 4 characteristics that are most predictive of neighborhoods with upward income mobility. We'll discuss that more in Module 3.
I have got to read that paper because I'm dying to know why these differences exist.
Well, in Module 3, we'll explore neighborhood characteristics that may help explain much of the differences in upward income mobility. There's a lot more you can do with the Opportunity Atlas, and we strongly encourage you to view the tutorial videos that explain advanced mode and the compare tool. Just visit opportunityinsights.org/atlas resources to view video tutorials, download research papers, and get answers to common questions. Now, let's have a quick review of what we've learned in this module. You can use the Opportunity Atlas to zoom into a geographic region, select groups of individuals, and then compare their outcomes to the national average and to other neighborhoods. You can also compare present-day neighborhood characteristics. And the question we're trying to answer is, what explains differences in upward income mobility between families in different neighborhoods? We'll get closer to answering that question in Module 3. See you there.